GRC fails quietly, then explodes loudly, not because policies are missing, but because proof is missing. Evidence trails don't survive real operations. Tool gaps, spreadsheet drifts, vendor handouts, expectations, and temporary workarounds. This episode is about upgrade from annual audit theater to continuous proof loops. So leaders can feel calm, control, teams have clarity, and organizations earn trust that lasts. Let's welcome our speaker, Divya, to join us and discuss on this topic. Hi, Divya. Welcome to our podcast. How are you today?
Hi, friend, sir. I'm good and thanks a lot for inviting me for the podcast. It's a great opportunity, especially being the Women's Month
Yeah.
around. So, really privileged to be talking in your podcast. So thanks again.
Thank you, Divya. Welcome to the Women's Month, which we are going to do as the podcast thing. Now, coming to the first point that I wanted to start with is what does GRC become, or when does GRC become theater, and what does proof mean on the board level? Divya?
Okay, having been in banking industry for more than a decade, especially being in GRC, so I've been through multiple audit and RBI being the strict regulator. I have also faced a lot of examinations where auditors come and check independently. So most of the time, what I observe in most of the organization is controls are documented. Maybe you will have policies, frameworks, guidelines, procedures, standards, or whatever it is. Documentation is available, but it's just documented. But when you ask for a proof and line by line evidence or something, that nobody is able to produce you or demonstrate what is the operation control and operational effectiveness. So organizations often confuse, when I have a policy, okay, I've documented everything, so that is my GRC. But actually, you have to prove your preparedness. So only the proof which you produce or the evidences which you produce, become sustainable. And especially at the board level, when you're asking, proof means some evidence which is functioning consistently over time. Like for example, you have a user access management. People come join your company and they leave after certain time. So what are the things you are following when you are onboarding a particular employee, and what are the things you are doing after exit of the employee happens at the AD level, at privilege access management level, or whatever it is. So it has to be a continuous process, and especially at the board level, the proof has to be repeatable. And board always cares about assurance, accountability, and visibility. Not simply produce some kind of a PPT and get claps and something. Beautification is not going to help the board. Whatever is compliant on paper, it has to be there in the practice as well. So whatever controls you're mapping in the policy, it has to be tested very regularly, and you cannot produce some old screenshots as a evidence, or you have given some exceptions at one point of time and you have not reviewed or accepted it, and it's like going on forever. And probably there is no audit readiness. Why I would say this is, whenever there is a plan of a scheduled audit, only then people start being aware of what they're supposed to do. Then only some rule reviews will happen, then only some kind of assessments are going to happen, risk assessments are going to happen. Only then you will start updating your risk register, because there is an audit coming up. So this is all happening in the last minute. It gets spiked only when audit is there. Otherwise, everybody is kind of relaxed, or probably not focused on that control mapping. So I feel that live control dashboard with some updates and status has to be produced to the board, so that that is the real governance, and I think board wants it.
What you are saying is the controls should not be kind of a manual work where they
Yeah.
look at only getting updated when the audit is ready. So, and there should be a
Mm.
system that is there where the board looks at a dashboard where it can look at what are the proofs or what are the dashboards that it is showing up, what is that we stand at the GRC board level where proof is evident and live is what you're saying. What
Yes.
are the top signs an organization is compliant on paper but operationally unsafe? So any pointers there, Divya?
There could be many, sir, because I have seen in multiple audits, so many privilege access reviews wouldn't have happened on time, which, if somebody misuses those admin credentials, um, it can be any ransomware attack or any lateral movement attack. So any unused privileged IDs also can be a target for the hacker, to escalate his privileges and do root level changes. So negligence or ignorance or unintentional, you know, avoidance of not doing a proper review on time itself is a very big challenge. And mostly, some of the organizations who are matured enough are using certain tools, for probably for maintaining the asset inventory, or probably for maintaining the access control or AD control. But more organizations who are not so very serious about cybersecurity, just because they want to do something on paper, still doing manual process of documenting changes in a Word document or an Excel sheet. This kind of tracking, doesn't have any audit trail also. Like anybody can modify anything at any point of time. Nobody becomes accountable ultimately, and it's very difficult to check the live status. How many of my endpoints are updated with antivirus as of now, as of today? So what if certain endpoints are left, not patched? Or what if some servers are not having at least n-1 patches? So these things, how many vulnerabilities exist? Whether, first of all, do you even know how many assets your organization is having? How many laptops you have given to employees? How many desktops you have? How much your data center assets are there? And do you even have visibility of the shadow IT assets? So that itself, the getting the visibility, getting the count, and once you know these are your assets, you have 100 assets, only then you can probably apply some controls. Okay, on endpoints I'm going to apply this kind of control, or probably on servers I'm going to apply this kind of control. And if I have server, I should know what are the flavors. Maybe for Linux there are separate things, Windows there are separate things. So these kind of visibility itself is not there. That is the most basic thing. You cannot protect something which you cannot see. Unless and until you know that you own it, how will you even protect it? So that, I think, that is the foundational thing which is missing in most of the organizations where I have interacted.
Inventory plays a major role, whether it is
Yeah, yeah.
assets that are there in the shadow side, the uh, assets which are on cloud, SaaS assets, what we are talking about, and the physical assets that are to be mapped. So that's what you are saying in what we can look at when it is there in paper, and how is it operationally usable. We don't have a mapping, is what we understand from what you are saying. If the
Yes.
board asked you to prove in 30 minutes, what evidence should be instantly available? You said dashboards. What else can be looked at when the boards ask for evidence?
I think slowly we have to move from manual evidence collection and spreadsheet based trackers to some kind of tooling. Okay, there are a lot of GRC tools available. So, wherein, for example, you are taking the ISO 27001 ISMS. So, there are certain things which are mandatory in the clauses. So, you should have a information security policy, you should have a management review, you should have a register, you should have so and so documents. So there is a checklist. Okay, HR policy has to be there, onboarding and exit interview. All these things are a part of ISMS. So when you have a tool-based thing, and you have to review your policies and SOPs at least annually, you should actually trigger a task, where the particular policy or SOP is updated annually. So every 12 months, the task should recur even without your manual intervention. And for example, you're monitoring some KRI data. So you want to know as on probably March is coming. So entire financial year, how many assets were undergoing VAPT? What are those assets which are probably not undergone VAPT? And in case there are 1,000 observations for the entire organization, how many are high, medium, low, and how many were closed, how many are open, how many were taken exception, how many were taken risk acceptance. So at this point of time, if I'm asking, you should be able to log in and demonstrate that this is the situation. But pathetically, what happens in most of the organization is, suppose 3rd March I'm asking you, give me the last financial year data of the vulnerability status, closure of observation. One guy generates it and give you the data is going to be something. And if you ask after 15 days and same guy generates or some other guy generates, the data is going to be again different. So this kind of inconsistency is there because I am closing in my Excel sheet and it is in my laptop. And maybe I have not synced with the application owner or the asset owner. And at his level, it might be open. There is also possibility that I conduct a PT and I keep the report to myself and I produce when audit questions me, like submit the PT report of particular website or a mobile app. So I produced. Maybe the business owner is not aware that these were the latest vulnerabilities, on which version it was conducted. So this kind of communication gap also exists when you keep it in a PDF or a Excel sheet. But when board is asking, maybe application owner will say, no, I have only 10 vulnerabilities and I'm planning to close by so and so date. But when you ask another team who has done the AppSec test, they will say, no, no, there can be 15 vulnerabilities, so this is the evidence. So this is what even board will not have proper visibility because the team owners themselves don't have visibility, and the people who are conducting the security testing also don't have proper visibility because again it depends. They have a certain calendar, but they get some ad hoc request, and nobody is tracking when you keep folders and Excel sheets. The tracking is almost very haphazard. So that synchronization is never there. So even if I'm giving to board also, probably you discuss internally first and then only you have to prove. But on the spot, I don't think so. Normal organizations will not be able to prove unless they are very, very matured in their tools and capability. I don't think so. Any normal organization, they can't prove anything in 30 minutes. I don't think so. They are that ready. Readiness is very limited.
No, what you are saying with the tools also, the data feeding is very critical, and that data is not centralized, is what you are saying. And if
Yeah, yeah,
the
the data
reports
is
are,
not centralized.
yeah,
Yeah.
so if the reports that you have shared last week has to be consolidated, it is coming from different teams, and there is no visibility of how that mapping is happening, is what you are saying. Divya. Am I right in
Yes.
saying that? I think
Yes,
the
yes.
proof is not a repeatable evidence that the controls are operating, not just by design. So language should be that assurance, accountability, decision visibility is what we should look at, is what you are saying. Now, coming to the next point, where do the evidence chains break mostly in daily operations? Because we do collect data daily, right? So your take on it, Divya.
Okay. Where the evidence chain exactly breaks, for example, some application is going live. So there is an application owner, there is an IT team which is supporting that. They probably come to a CISO team for security testing. So some kind of walkthrough review, everything happens, and they need sign off from the CISO and the CTO probably before going live. So first of all, who should close the vulnerability net? Sometimes it is also depending on the vendor because he would have provided if it is not an in-house application. So that ownership ambiguity comes if it is on the vendor or on the the bank team or the user team. And first of all, there is a lot of manual things which is happening. The evidence collection is also like very very manual. Suppose I say, if you are the person operating that particular application, I want to do a background check of all the employees who are handling that critical application. So those are again manual evidence collection which happens again. spreadsheet based trackers will be there. So some testing is done, and the observations and reports are shared in Excel sheet. Again, it's can be manipulated, or it can be changed. Nobody will know who changed the last time and when the document control has been modified. And
Modify.
there are some exceptions which may not be even documented over email, because sometimes they are in a pressure to go live. So they may seek certain exception approvals that probably you allow us to go live, and within certain time we are going to patch this particular thing or complete this particular thing. So till then you give us an exception approval. So we launch the product and probably it goes live. We all feel happy, okay, we launched this particular thing, and later there is a possibility nobody even worries about the exception unless then some other audit happens. Unless and until that, nobody will bother, because anyway product went live. So application owner also will be relaxed that okay, he will continue switching to operations and daily BAU works. And for security testing team, they have too many works to do, and probably even they are not tracking. So who has to track? So this ambiguity itself, and people tend to take some shortcuts, just to make the product live, or just to get the business. So that shortcuts was also kind of normalized in some of the organization culture. So that is the most dangerous thing, when you normalize certain shortcuts, and when you have not performed review, or you have performed some review, you have identified certain weaknesses, you have some exceptions, but you are not recording it, and you have some logs generated but you are not retaining the logs for future troubleshootings, and exceptions are just orally discussed that chalo chalo we will do this, so we'll somehow handle this, but it is never documented. So they fail at this particular point of time, I feel. So this is a major thing when you choose shortcut and there is no proper ownership, accountability, undocumented things can also happen. So I think that is a major break in the evidence chain.
You are saying is one is the centralization part that you are
Yeah,
emphasizing again, and the second is if there is a new asset is coming, who's taking that ownership, adding that asset, tagging it so that it comes to the inventory is what is the second point that you are telling. And the third point that you are saying is, as it is manual intervention, if there is no note mentioned or it is not updated into these Excel sheets which are controlled by one person, or it is stored at a shared location but people have versions, then there is a challenge. So these are the three pointers that you are saying when we look at
yeah.
evidence chains which are getting into a problem. Now what could be the most five most common breakpoints, whether, now you said something called as ownership. Now if I give you a tool or a kind of hands up, what is that you look at? Ownership, tooling, handoff, exceptions, or culture is what which breaks in this five. What do you think is a common thing that which will?
I think it's again the culture. See, it comes from the top-down approach. If head of security or the technology or CISO or whoever it is, like if and the board level, if they are very serious about cybersecurity and about maintaining uh, tool-based evidences, so I think everything else gets sorted, because they will if the leaders and top management is good, the leaders will define the proper racing matrix, like who is responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed, and probably they will invest in buying some good tools, and then you will avoid manual evidences or Excel based things or any undocumented exceptions, because everything is there in the tool. So I think it's a top down culture plays. According to me, is the major break point. If they are not strong, probably the junior level also will not be so keen on doing all this extra efforts. I think if it comes from the top, and if the board and CISO, CTO, these kind of people are very serious and audit is very strict, I think
I
that
think
culture flows.
now what you're saying, I was about to say that only the culture flows. If the right thing is done at the level on top, the people down also will follow, and that becomes an adherence for the organization to look at how do we follow a tool or uh, maybe a process. I will say tool is again a set of processes that you want to run it. So if there is a process set at the board level and that is percolated down to the team, I think that will fall in place is what you're saying. And the point that you say is evidence chain equals control, execution, log, review. So this chain has to go look at and say, then you find out what is to be kept, what is to be deleted or retention, and where do you apply breaks where you say this is the last mile and this is where we need to look at closing things. And that's how now audits don't fail at the start, they fail at the last mile is what I think you are saying in as well. Who owns proof? Compliance teams, control owners, or business leaders?
I think proof has to be provided where execution happens. Basically, for example, if it is any application, like since I come from banking, so I have internet banking, mobile banking app. So in that case, the business owners will be responsible for providing the proof. But whereas if it is related to SIM evidences, whether SOC is monitoring this particular application or not, the server is integrated or not, who has to provide the logs, then it probably that evidence has to come from the SOC team. So wherever execution happens, if you're talking about SIM, then that owner will be providing. If you're talking about database activity monitoring, then that owner. If it's DLP, then that owner. So wherever execution is happening, whoever is owning the execution, the proof must sit where the execution happens. So in most of the places, it's business and IT which owns the control execution, and whoever is the control owner, they have to maintain the evidence. So if CISO is controlling SOC, security testing team, infra security team, and database activity monitoring team, so those control owners will have to maintain the evidence. Compliance teams usually they will only circulate the frameworks, advisories, what are the regulatory requirements which are coming, these things, and at leadership level they just enforce it, that it has to happen. They will be enabling us, with the proper budget whenever we require, or with the proper manpower, with the people processing technology. So the leadership is going to enforce and enable most of the time, but proof definitely sits where the execution happens. So if you consider racing matrix, so the responsible person for providing proof will be the control owner only. The accountable person will be the business unit head, whoever is running that particular business, if it's internet banking, mobile banking, or core banking, or any other uh, thing. Consulted will be the either sometimes it's the risk department or the compliance department, usually consulted, and informed will be the executive leadership, probably through your quarterly meetings, monthly meetings, or whatever it is, you keep them informed and take their approvals for going ahead. So proof isn't about a department, it's again discipline embedded in the operations. That's what I would like to say.
Yeah, got it. So what you're saying is it is emphasizes the ownership where it work happens. That's the first point that you're saying, and
Yeah.
compliance enables is what you're saying. So every department where work happens, those controls should be there with them, and they have to report it, right? So
Yeah.
that's the point that you're saying. How do you assign control ownership without creating bureaucracy? Is that possible?
Definitely possible, because that is what you would have designed in your initial policy itself. Um, Especially because I have been into banking, Reserve Bank of India has given us proper cybersecurity framework and IT GRC frameworks also, where they have defined the roles and responsibilities of what CISO has to do, what technology department, what risk management department has to do, and what an IT strategy committee has to do, what an infosec committee has to do, how often they have to meet. All these things are clearly, the master directions and guidelines are very clear from Reserve Bank. So we will try to incorporate the same in most of the financial institutions, may it be NBFCs or small finance bank or bigger banks, scheduled commercial banks and private banks, mostly the same is percolated. uh, Rarely this friction happens, but I think more or less it is sorted. Like who has to do first line of defense is always information technology, the IT or the CTO. Second line is always mostly the risk department, CISO compliance. Third layer is always audit department. So I think it's more or less very clear hierarchy and who has to do what roles and responsibilities are there. But in case certain organizations have special designations which are not normal from these, I think there can be some conflict of interest, because in some smaller organizations there can be same person acting as both CTO and CISO, or CISO and DPO. So where there is a conflict of interest, I think their top management have to take a call who has to be the owner. But we ideally have to avoid this conflicts in bigger organization, and it's more or less very clear. If anything is there, we
Got
can sort it out with the board level. If the board approved policy, then I don't think so anybody is going to question it.
So what you're saying in a sense is that there is a RACI that is already set who has to be
Yeah.
kept informed and stuff, whether it is internal to the bank, and the guidelines are there very clearly with RBI, with your IT GRC
Market
process there,
attendance.
and also the hierarchy is set on the roles and responsibility that the organization has fixed for each of the resources that are there, and they
Yeah.
have the access is what you're saying. Now, control versus evidence, what's the practical difference teams misunderstand normally? So what is your take on it, Divya?
Okay. So control is a mechanism. For example, user access control policy or whatever is there, that's a control. So it can have multiple things inside it. In user access control, I can still have a password policy. What is a password control? I will say probably all your passwords should have 8 characters. In that minimum 8 characters, you should have capital letter, small letter, and a minimum one special character. So this is a kind of control. Whether the control is implemented in all my laptops, desktops, or not, okay, that is the evidence I require, right? So I might have to log in to my Microsoft service account or AD, and then check what is the password limit, whether minimum 8 characters are there, or more than that is also fine. Minimum is 8. So more than that, if you keep, okay, when is my password expiry, whether it is expiring every 45 days, yes or no, that you have to check in the system. Whether 3 times of wrong attempts to do wrong password, whether it's going to lock the system or not. Then history, like how frequently you can use the same password. Probably you will not allow last 5 passwords, last 10 passwords, as a history requirement. So if it gets locked, then how do you reset it through an SSO or what level? So all this is evidence which you have to produce. Maybe the screenshot of the system, or if you're doing a user access review. So there are 1,000 employees in the month of February, and probably some 3 4 employees resigned. So when I'm doing a reconciliation in March, I should have removed those 3 axes, like who came, who exited, and who entered newly. So that reconciliation should be there. So that reconciliation report is the evidence. Control is defined probably once, or when the policy is made, or whenever there is a new regulatory requirement, we might define a control. So control is just a mechanism. Evidence is a trace, that it is working with probably you should maintain it with some timestamp, who is the reviewer, who did the audit, or any exceptions are there. This is not possible because Microsoft is not supporting. This is not possible because it's up for a decommissioning in the next month. So all these exception notes also are evidences, like why I was not able to follow it, that also has to be documented. Why particular thing is not as per policy, that also has to be documented with proper justification. and probably a future timeline that when I would be able to achieve it. If that is a constraint for now during March 2026, probably by June or December, somehow I should be able to achieve it. So that's my justification. So this is, more or less control and evidence difference.
So what we are seeing is, when you define a policy, when you say, or the policy can have multiple underlying documents which are there, and each policy which is having the underlying documents are the evidences that they have to provide. So this is what is there. Maybe the, I think it plays, as you rightly said, the AD side. It goes into the user management, who has the what kind of access, what kind of privileges, what kind of accounts he is in a position to access, is what is the evidence that you are going to give, and based on the policies that you have created. So got that point. Now, coming to what is a working control that still fails evidence expectations, is there anything that you can list out, Divya?
So there are so many times like log retention is not there. You would have documented in the policy minimum 6 months or 1 year. I'll maintain online logs. Then I'll move to archive or take a backup. So you wouldn't have done the backup, or you wouldn't have done the restoration, or you have tried it. It is not 100% successful. It would have failed. Then you never troubleshooted what is the failure root cause. So who has reviewed whether it is documented? So many times, without manual signature, a lot of Excel sheet evidences are produced as an evidence. Like nobody would have manually signed it, or it's not in any particular tool. It's just a simple Excel sheet. So that means you would have created any day, right? You could have created just before the audit would have started. It's not that you have, rigorously done the review throughout the calendar year or the financial year. So not signing some reviews and not tracking exceptions at all, and you have accepted a particular risk as on date, and you have left it. You are not even reviewing the risk acceptance, and probably there is no historical data which exists. You don't have, uh, you cannot prove it if you don't have a historical trace, like what was the situation earlier and what is the situation now. So that historical data also to be maintained at many places, that versions, what all have changed. So that is also important. So majorly, these are few things where, the failure happens in the evidences. And probably you have written so much in the policy, and you would have linked many SOPs. So if you have written password management in your policy, and there is a password management SOP, you change something in the policy, you take the approval, but you forget to update it in the SOP. So that is a big governance issue. Like you keep on changing change management process, network security, email security, work from home guidelines. Also, something new has come. You have updated in your SOP, or you forgot in your policy. So these kind of things, like your policy and SOP itself is contradicting each other. So somewhere you say I'm covering these many assets when you're writing a policy, but when you're actually doing an SOP, you say something else, and in practice you're doing some other thing. So
So
like
I think
nobody,
when you, what you are saying is, if there is a control also, if it is misinterpreted,
yeah.
misrepresented, and you take that and start implementing, the controls will go haywire. And then when we review it, we are seeing that there's a challenge that has happened. What was the as is to what is to be is a big gap, right? And we were working on one project, only doing that, Divya. One point where was there is, when we implemented a tool, this is just to say as is and what is. So just a highlight. So what we did is, we had told these are the set of pointers that has to be
Hmm.
implemented. When we looked at the pointer, as is versus what is a huge gap. What
Hmm.
is not at all matching to what as is. So when we find out, the documents were misread or misinterpreted, and that's where the whole change of control went into a problem. So now, coming to that point, what is the minimum evidence standard that keeps auditors and the leadership confident about? So is there anything that we can look at that, Divya?
Basically, everybody should have repository of all the policies and SOPs which are regularly updated, because most of the places I feel uh, there are small teams who are designing their own SOP for their own tools, and probably it's not brought into the central repository. Suppose I have my infra security team who are doing a vulnerability assessment. None of my business owners will know that SOP. None of my IT or process owners or compliance will not know that SOP because they don't have access, or it's not stored in a central repository, whatever reason. So, first of all, that lack of visibility, that what is a standard operating procedure and how I have to go through this, that itself is a big challenge. So at least maintaining a central repository. So these are my policies. Suppose an employee joins the organization, he should know what is the acceptable usage policy. So he should not misuse the email ID to register in Big Basket or Domino's or some other other websites for downloading some free content. So there is an email policy, right? How you have to use. What is the hygiene, password hygiene you have to maintain. You cannot write your password on a sticky note and stick it clean desk, clean screen, and all the password policies. So how do you even communicate this to an employee? How do you, maintain this? By probably having good training and maintaining time-stamped execution logs of whatever you're tracking. You have to have everything timestamped, not just a manual screenshot. That screenshot could have been taken years ago. But whenever there is a timestamp, so this date, this time, this happened. So always timestamp is necessary. Even when forensics are happening also, timestamps play a very crucial role. So we have to ensure that synchronization is there in NTP level also, and everything is timestamped evidence. And who is preparing the document or preparing the evidence, who is reviewing, who is approving. This clarity has to be mentioned. Otherwise, nobody knows who documented this, when it was reviewed, in which committee it was placed for approval. So these things are also very important, like who did the review. And exceptions, of course, I'm talking a lot about exceptions and risk acceptance criteria, because these are the very common things which are ignored at the organization level. So that has to be documented. When you are giving any sign off, you have certain exceptions, you document it. And a retention policy you can define, like at sectoral level, at banking level, we have transaction data should be maintained for 10 years. You have to maintain for 10 years. Otherwise, any customer or any thing happens, if you don't have the previous logs or what happened 2 years ago, you will not be able to do any forensics or any kind of investigations. You cannot support. It can be of very high importance. It can cause legal risk, reputation risk, compliance risk. Everything can happen. So that retention, even now the DPDP also has come. So lot of things you have to maintain, right from the consent you are taking, the data disposal also you have to do it securely. All these things, minimum things which you have to maintain, probably a tool based thing, proper accountability, everything should be time stamped, and everything should be clearly documented and defined. So a control you have defined, but there is no evidence for that particular control, then just it's just like a promise you are giving to the board. But when there is no proof, it can never be validated that it is effective.
I think what you are saying is the proof matters when it comes to
Yeah.
pointers to the auditors and the board. But if there is an exception that is there, if it is document evidence is available, then there is no problem. Otherwise, there is a challenge, is what you are saying, right, Divya?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Yes.
got it. So what we are saying is a control without evidence is just a promise. We need to validate that. The auditors look at validating the proof is what they will look, because auditors need to look at if the control is effective. So what is the proof for it, right? So that's the first point they will look. How do we build a continuous proof loop, which is the primary pointer that we want to look at for this discussion? without slowing delivery.
Okay. See, continuous proof loop is again, when you're going for anything manual, you cannot do something very repetitively when you're doing everything manually. So
Hmm.
first is automation. Automation doesn't mean you have to use any big AI ML technologies or something of that sort. It is a very simple, whatever GRC tools you are having, you take a very simple tool. So, for example, you have a particular calendar. These are the tasks I have to do. So build some kind of a calendar for each and everything based on your information security policy or the GRC policy, whatever you have defined for your organization. So this is the thing. So if you think that every month my AD review has to happen, create a task or a ticket for that particular owner who is handling the AD access review. So that recurring task should come to him every month. So when the task comes to his bucket, he has to conduct the AD review. Probably, February has passed, so this is beginning of March. So he will take the entire February month, whatever review has been done, and he has to upload it as an evidence in the tool and submit whatever comments or remarks that this has been done and reviewed. And once he submits it, probably goes to his supervisor or manager for another level of approval, and that is done. Same task is going to trigger to him by the end of March, so that whatever happened in March should be reviewed in the first week of April. There has to be a deadline which is set. Probably we'll allow him to upload it within say 5th of April, and till 5th of April he has not done that particular review, an escalation task should trigger or an email notification should trigger to his higher management or supervisor that this particular thing is pending. So in this way, every month the task is triggered, every month is going to upload it, review, and then of course upload with evidence in that particular tool, and it is getting approved by his senior people. So that is all. Like when you automate it, probably certain things have to be done quarterly, certain things have to be done on a daily basis, like daily backups you are taking. So you have done it, and this is the proof I have done it. So these kind of things will go on continuously. It's not that okay, auditors are coming in May. That's the reason I will start working for March, April. I will start creating something from last January onwards or last April onwards. I'll now start creating the evidence. This is not the way. So automate everything, trigger the task, and capture the evidence and then approve it. Schedule everything. There has to be a calendar, and the calendar also has to be reviewed. Somebody has to review. Apart from the people who are executing it, the GRC team, somebody has to review that. And if there is again any exception, you know, so and so reason, uh, this was allowed for a business purpose, to facilitate this particular product launch or whatever. This particular exception was there, or whatever reason. So then you can, that workflow also you can track, and there has to be some metrics, KRIs, KPIs, or whatever you have to track. So these were the number of systems, these were the antivirus updated, and these were not updated for so and so reason. You couldn't upgrade the patch because of so and so reason, or you upgraded. So whether it's upgraded or not. So this way continuously it can happen, and probably the GRC managers can have a weekly 15 minutes some control health check. So once they click on particular framework, whether it is RBA framework, SEBI framework, or ISMS framework, once they click, that dashboard has to show them that this is the thing, this is something which is missing, this is the update, whether any escalation is required or not. So this is what probably they have to check, measure, validate, and if there is something off, then immediately they have to start tracking, start questioning, and probably this kind of visibility for a GRC manager will eliminate any kind of surprises in future.
What we are saying is you should have a continuous proof that has been generated rather than have having it generated at on the last minute is what you're saying. Uh, what is one simple scales across teams? Is there anything that we can fix, or is there something
Yeah,
that is planned like that?
see, whatever we are all doing in multiple Excel sheets, or if you're following up on emails, like this is a particular advisory, have you guys done this particular thing? Have you guys done this particular thing? And taking the evidences over email, or keep it in a common share drive and then checking it. So I think this manual task will be very crazy. It will not really promise you that the controls are working effectively. Again, I would say automation. If there is an automation, once the GRC manager logs in, he can have a weekly check. This is a particular control. This is a work in progress. For example, DPDP is come. So nobody has still developed the ROPA related things, or DPIA has not yet started. So this is something which I have to start. This is something I have to plan, or this was already planned but it is delayed, or escalation is required at this particular time. So these are some of the checks which the GRC manager can quickly get the update. And some of the tools also provide you the risk register. So this particular thing was taken as an exception, but now that due date is also passed, probably that starts appearing in red color, and he can convert it into a risk, so that that particular exception go and sit in the risk register. So probably in the next committee meeting, it can be produced to the management or the top level people, whether to mitigate that risk, or treat the risk, or accept the risk, or you know transfer it through cyber insurance. So this kind of heat map also you can generate once you have all the data in your hand, in front of your eyes. This is a very, very, very simple 10-15 minutes job for you to get the overview. Weekly ones also, if the GRC manager can just check it, that's it. That gives you great visibility and reduce your stress.
One more question that we want to talk about, then we'll summarize on what we have been discussing for the last 40 minutes now. What gets measured? Coverage, effectiveness, timelines, exceptions, or remediation velocity? What gets measured, Divya?
Coverage and effectiveness both gets measured, because first of all, coverage is the main thing. For example, if you take the SEBI CSCRF, the guidelines, so if you are an MII, then you have some 300 and odd controls. If you are a self-certified regulated entity, then you have around 172 and odd controls. So first of all, you should know how much you are applicable. So if you are a small finance bank, then controls are different for you. If you are a NBFC, it's different for you. If you are a scheduled commercial bank, it's different. If you are a regional rural bank, it's different. So first of all, you should know how many controls are applicable and how effective you are doing. If you are doing more than what is required, it's always well and good, but you should minimum do 1 2 3. Means you have to do 1 2 3, and how effectively you are doing 1 2 and 3 is also equally important. So I think this measure is the foundation of your GRC entirely. Probably
Comments which
then
you have
comes
given.
the exception and remediation, etc. But I think mostly the primary thing is the control coverage and how effectively we monitor it.
Got it. So what we are saying is we talk about small loops, automation of the collection that we have to, periodic reviews is what we are talking about. Then exception flows, it has pretty true clarity. So just heavier, it is the clearer one, I think, is what you're saying. With this, Divya, I think what we have is we are on top of the hour also. So I have a small pointers that I have taken as takeaway. Before that, I see some of the questions coming here. I will read those questions. I'm able to bring it to the window. So what I have is bring it. So I'll read it out. Okay. Uh, First is insightful discussion. Actually, who drives the GRC project in an organization that makes all difference? Smart people will always try for shortcuts, which may not be necessary beneficial to organizations. Right. So that is one question. In evidence, top-driven approach has been success rate more than 80% is what is one question that has come from Rahul. So that is a question from Rahul. You want to take that, Divya?
Yeah, that is actually more than a question. Actually, he is also giving an insight that what we said is the
Yeah.
culture
So
is
I'm
more
able to bring
important.
it here.
He is
Right.
also, yeah, he's also accepting the top-driven approach when when your
Mm.
senior management and the C-suite executives, if they are very strict and very demanding, only
Mm.
then the culture will flow through your employees, and the GRC becomes very strong. And as you said, smart people will always try to find shortcut, and it just happens. That is why this 4I principle, 6I principle, make or check by
Yeah.
concept, everything has come, especially into sectors like banking. Otherwise, it's very easy to compromise one or two people, to find the
Biggest
shortcuts. So it's
the
a
biggest
thank you,
link
Rahul, for this.
the biggest chain of this one is humans are the weak link in the system. So that's the challenge that we've been seeing for a very long time, right?
Yes,
So
and
now there is another
more than
question.
that, just one point I would like to add. We did not cover too much in the vendors front. So you are
Mhm.
as strong as your weakest vendor. That
Yeah,
also I must say. Humans, of course, are the weakest link, but now with the regular awareness trainings and other things, that quality has further improved. But when it comes to our supply chain and vendors, I think we are
yeah,
as strong as the weakest vendor we
correct.
have onboarded, because any breach at his or
And
side,
if
our
you
data
brought
go.
And you brought an important point because vendor systems are not systems which are at the enterprise level. They have some systems, and when you bring that vendor onboarding itself is a bigger challenge, which is a bigger risk for us to look at. Their controls are their pointers to be added to the system, and we bring them in. So I agree with that. I understand what you're saying. Now, I have another question, which is why continuous monitoring is a result of VAPT AppSec test. So this is, I think, again a pointer that
Yeah, that is what
Sumedha is trying to
Sumedha
give.
is trying to emphasize. That's a right thing.
Yeah, I have another question which is come is if data is not centralized, at least all reports can be stored centrally at to take inputs from the presentation to the board and senior level. So that's a point, but your take on it before I can put something on there, Divya.
Definitely, this is what I was trying to tell. When you ask somebody to generate data today, you will end up with 500 rows. Probably
Yeah,
after certain days, you ask them to generate the same data for the same period, you may end up with 600, rows
true.
also. So this inconsistency is there because of Excel sheet, though it is centrally stored also. Again, the who can access that access role-based access control also we have to keep. Like who can really modify the data, and somebody leaves the organization, there is no historical trace. Like last 2 years, what are the committee meetings happened? What were the exceptions approved 2 years ago? Because today, if I join as a GRC person, when I don't know what exceptions were given 2 years back, how will I trace it? So the
Yeah.
centralization is definitely what Sumedha is telling. I totally agree.
I get what she's saying. See, what we are saying also, Smeda, is that when you keep separate files, they don't match because, as Divya rightly said, you have two versions of two separate data pointers, and if the fields are the same, that is a one point of reconciliation. If the fields are not with what we are collecting the data, there's a mismatch on these two sheets. Now, again, those two sheets reconsolidation becomes a challenge, and again when board picks up or the person who's building up this presentation, if he picks up the right data, then it is fine. If he does not pick up the right data, then there is a problem again. So that's where centralization is what they are suggesting, where you have a system where every system is automatically getting tracked based on the update that you are doing to the system. So it does not sit on the Excel sheets. Now, if you have an update that will be now, it has to be automated in such a way that if you procure a laptop, that should, and you put it into the AD or
SAP
anything,
list.
it should also have an entry that has been automatically put into the inventory list. Who's the owner of it, who's using it, and what is his role as per se has to be listed also. That way is what we are talking about when we look at automation. That's what we are
And
talking, I think.
probably quarterly review. Is Divya
Yeah,
still owning the laptop even after three
yeah,
months? So every 3 months, take a confirmation somehow, and then if something happens, whether you have MDM, what happens if the asset is lost? What happens if the data is lost? So the responsible usage, everything covers people, process, technology, entire governance of the
yeah.
organization falls over there.
Right. So I'll summarize on what we discussed. I think that's the pointers that we wanted to look at. We spoke about evidence is not a byproduct. So that's the first point that we said. It must be designed into workflows. That's the pointer that we were saying
Yeah.
just now also, where we said any documentation which is on Excel sheets can be missed or misinterpreted also is the first point. Continuous proof loops reduce fear, fewer surprises, faster audits, and calmer incidents is what I think, what we said in as many words that we. Ownership beats documentation because control owners should be giving the right data, who owns it, who has to give it to whom, and who has to process is what rhythm, exception handling, and handling the win also is very important. Spreadsheets are the governance's depth engine. They dilute integrity and traceability because one record is hidden or deleted without knowledge, then the whole structure of the data goes off, and there is a lot of challenges that we see when we access that data, and there will be always a gap, as Divya rightly said. 15 days back, you had 500 records. Now, if you reconcile, it will be 600, or sometimes you may get only 400 also. That is also a possibility, right? So, automation is a leverage where it strengthens evidence collection and reviews are put in a disciplined way. So, that is the takeaways that I have. Any final pointers that you want to give, Divya, before we conclude?
Yes, of course. I think best GRC is not lie doesn't lie only with the GRC manager. I think all the employees of the organization, may they be temporary, contractual, or vendor employees, or full time employees, right from the board level, because board level people generally seek certain exception approvals. They need USB access for downloading certain things, since they're always traveling. For certain geolocations we would have restricted certain accesses because of their convenience. We may enable in certain geolocations, and their email ID also is the most vulnerable email ID, because spear phishing and targeted phishing can happen on them. So it's not just the employee. I think even the housekeeping staff, the physical security guard also should be most aware of these things, because tailgating they should not
Yeah,
permit. They find certain some USB drive in a parking lot, or while cleaning something, they shouldn't go and plug it into the system. I think everybody is a cybersecurity champion and a GRC expert to keep the organization very cyber resilient. And I think awareness is always my favorite topic. So try to keep everybody aware, especially inside your family also. You can spread some awareness, so that nobody gets scammed in phishing or ransomware link, because insider threats also we need to avoid. That is something probably we did not bring into discussion in this GRC thing. So insider threat is also a very big threat which you will not monitor. So this is also something which you have to keep an eye on. Overall, yes, it was a very thoughtful discussion, and I think a very less spoken topic about. So it's good that we, throw light on such a very important topic. I know GRC without evidence is a theater. So let's not just do the performance by, showcasing some colorful slides. So let's really do some proof-based work, and let us do it continuously and repeatedly. Thank you so much. Once again, these were my closing remarks, Great, sir.
Right. The way I think what you are saying in as many words is first is the awareness. That's what you are
Yeah.
saying, because you spoke about non technical stuff. That's one thing that happens when you are right saying that there is a USB which I found they just plug into the reception system or any other system that is there they have been using. So those are challenges that is only can be prevented, as you rightly said, with proper awareness. And cybersecurity or GRC is not one person's activity. It is the organization's entire organization's responsibility to look at protecting the assets, right? So that is the key pointer that we take away from this discussion. And thank you for joining us, Divya. Thank you, audience, for joining us. And we'll have another topic coming up next Tuesday again. See you at the same time at 6:30 p.m. IST next Tuesday. Thank you for that, and good day, ma'am. Bye for now.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you all.